Please don't mind me. I am just here to tell stories. Just press the like button and let's begin. I'm a school bus driver. It's 2:31 a.m. The kids are crying. In the 7 years since Clifford passed away, it's been this job that's kept me sane. It's the routine, waking up at 5:15 a.m. every day, hitting every stop on time, getting the kids to school and back home through traffic. I'm good at my job. Never lost a kid, never been in an accident. I used to be able to say I never missed a stop, right up until this last Monday. I was thinking about how it would have been our anniversary next week. I mean, Clifford and I could never have gotten married, not then, not with his wife still around. But next week, and it would have been 10 years since the day we met. I'd just let the kids off at the last stop when my thoughts were broken by a young voice from the back of the bus. Miss driver?" It was one of 3 kids in the back, the kids from Willow Street, the second to last stop. I was sure I had stopped there, dropped them off. My thoughts drifted back to Clifford. Damn it. I swallowed my pride and went back 2 stops to let the kids off. I needed to stay focused on my job. No more slip-ups. I don't usually make mistakes like that. Then Tuesday it happens twice. I let the kids from Adams Lane off only to realize the kids from Bloomington are still on board. I double back. I take a deep breath. This job is your sanity. It's been 7 years. I have to move on. Just think about the kids. I look up at the mirror. It's the kids from Adams Lane. They're still on the bus. I'd made it to Adams before going back to Bloomington. I had been sure of it. Had I not let the kids off? That was Tuesday. I wish it was still like that. Today's so much worse. I keep parking by the various stops, and every time I remember letting the kids off, I start driving. I get to the next stop. I remember letting another batch of them off. I look back up, and they're all still on the bus. Every single one of them. Most of them are crying now. 1 or 2 have managed to fall asleep. The rest have started screaming. When I stop now, when I drive off, I have a clear memory of them rushing off, running through the open bus door, happy to get away. When I drive off, they're back on board, crying, screaming like they never got off. It's been more than 10 hours now. It's so dark outside. I haven't seen a car on the road for hours. My supervisor called at around 8 p.m. He didn't seem to care about the kids. He was just wondering why I hadn't brought the bus back. I was sure their parents would call the police by now. "Pat, what's going on? Where's the damn bus? You were supposed to come back in an hour ago. I'm tired of waiting for you." He threatened to call the police if I didn't show up. I've tried calling him again, but he won't pick up. I want someone to call the police. I want this all to be over now. I keep daydreaming about Clifford, about the accident, about his red Mustang, the mangled mess of flesh and metal, how everything was everywhere, how he was everywhere. They never even found part of his wife's ribcage. I stop at Neely Street. I follow the kids. I get off of the bus to follow them, and I blink. I'm back in my seat. They're back in their seats. I open the doors again. I let them out. I follow. I get as far as seeing one kid reach for his front door, tears and snot running down his small face. I blink again. This next time I walk slowly. I blink each eye by itself. I follow the kid home again. I can see his door open. He stumbles inside. It closes. All the lights are off. I can't hear any voices coming from inside the house. I let both my eyes blink at once. I grab the emergency axe from the back of the bus and follow the kid home again. It's hard to break a door down without blinking. It takes 2 or 3 tries. The kid's on the floor like a rag doll, except there isn't just one of him. It's a pile of hims. I can see 2 women, I'm guessing his moms, in the kitchen. They're going about their day. It's like, it's just the afternoon for them, going about their business in a pitch-black house. I let myself blink again. I don't know how long it's been. My watch has stopped working. Nothing changes. The kids cry. None of them are sleeping anymore. Some of them have soiled themselves. They keep asking why I'm doing this to them. I'm not. I see a car pass by me on the road. It's like an imp jumps into my head and whispers a thought into my mind. Swerve. It'll all be over. Just swerve. I can see its details as we are about to collide. It's a red Mustang. As the metal of the bus meets the metal of the car, I can see its driver. He is stiff, still, his eyes fixed forward like a statue. His wife is in the passenger seat, Her chest has a gaping hole in it. It's a near miss. I hit the back of his car. He keeps driving. I keep driving. I've seen him twice more now. He's looping around the same road, waiting for me. I'm writing this because I want you to know why I'm doing this. Someone has to. I can't think of another way out. No one will pick up their phone. Whenever I try calling 911, I just get radio static. I can't take them anymore. The lights inside this bus, the odor of soiled children, the cries and begging. I'm going to find that car again, and I'm not going to miss it this time. I'm a truck driver, and my company has some strange rules. I've been working as a truck driver for well over 10 years now, but I only recently changed companies. I actually would have stayed in my own company, but when my friend Jake told me how much his company paid, I practically begged him to get me a job there. He referred me there, and I got the job after a quick interview. The interview itself was very strange, because I was asked some questions I didn't expect, like, have you ever abandoned your vehicle on the road? Are you afraid of the dark? Are you religious, etc.? I answered everything truthfully and got hired right on the spot, so I didn't think twice about the oddity of the questions. My job was to transport dried meat products to a small town, and for some reason, the company said it could only be done at night and that I had to be there by morning. I'm used to night shifts, and the handsome pay more than compensated for it, so I didn't complain. When the time came for my first tour, Jake explained which route I should take to get to my destination, stating the GPS was off a little. Before I entered the truck, he sent a message to my phone and told me to listen to it when I get on the road, since it explains some basic rules I should follow. I thanked him and started driving. When I got on the old road which Jakey told me to take, I opened the message he sent me and realized it was an audio recording from him. Here's what it said. Hey Paul, welcome to the company. Now I know you're an experienced truck driver, but our company has a list of rules you need to strictly follow while you're driving. I'm gonna lay them out for you here, and you make sure to follow them as best you can. I'll also send you a text message so you can read the rules in case you aren't sure. Now first of all, make sure to turn on your high beams and keep them on at all times, since it's really dark on the road. You may notice that even with the lights on it's really dark, but don't let that concern you. Within the first 10 miles you may see a dead-end sign ahead. Ignore it and just keep driving. If your lights start flickering by this point, speed up and drive as fast as you can until the flickering stops. You may see an old man hitchhiking by the road at this point. Make sure to stop your vehicle and ask him where he's going. If he says, to the nearest town, let him in. If he says anything else, floor it and don't look back. If you do let him in, he will remain quiet for about an hour while you're driving, and then he'll ask you to stop and let him out, despite being in the middle of nowhere. Do what he says, but once he's out, don't look at him while he's walking into the night. You should be well within the 20th mile by now. If you start to hear any banging or growling noises coming from the back of the truck, ignore them. They'll go away faster if you maintain a consistent driving speed, so try to do that. Before you reach the 30th mile, make sure to turn off your radio if it was on until now. Turning it down will not work, so make sure to turn it off. This is really important. By the 35th mile, your radio will suddenly turn on and will be at its highest volume. Now it's really important that you pay attention here. If a song plays, any song, simply turn it down or off. But if you only hear static, stop your truck right away. Turn off the engine. Lie down on the seat and close your eyes. Try to be as still as possible and keep your eyes closed. You'll hear tapping on the windshield and roof, but you'll be okay as long as you keep your eyes closed. Even if you hear the truck door opening, don't move. Whatever opens them will close them in a few seconds after sniffing around. Once the noises around the truck stop, you can open your eyes slowly and look at your driver's window. If the window is fogged up, wait 1 more minute. Otherwise, you can sit back up and continue driving. By the 50th mile, you'll start to see something running along your truck on all fours on the side of the road. No matter how fast you go, it will always keep up with your truck, but it's advised you maintain a speed of at least 60 mph. Try to keep your eyes on the road because there's a curve, after which the creature will be gone. If the creature is still following you after the curve, speed up and hope you lose it by the next curve. You only have 3 curves, so make them count. By the 70th mile, your truck will sputter to a halt. Remain as calm as you can and try restarting the engine as fast as you can. Don't look in the rearview mirror at the figures running towards your truck. Just start the engine, and as soon as you do, floor it. You'll notice by mile 80 that it's getting really hot inside the truck. Don't bother with the air conditioner because it won't work. Try taking off your jacket, but don't open the window under any circumstances. Try not to fall asleep either, because even though the road goes straight, you may find yourself swerving off a cliff if you close your eyes. If you need to use the bathroom, only do it between the 85th and 90th mile, and make sure to keep your high beams on while you're doing it. Do not step off the road or out of the light. When you're done taking a leak, you may see someone move behind your truck just as you turn around. Don't try following them, because you'll just endlessly move around the truck just in time for them to always get behind the next corner, and they want you to stay outside as long as possible. If you hear a high-pitched scream in the distance while you're taking a leak, run back to the truck and floor it. I don't care if you piss your pants, but do not waste a second running back. Regardless of the mileage, at around 3 a.m. your phone will start ringing. Don't answer it, no matter who it is, even me. The caller will try to get you to answer 3 times before sending you a message. Don't open the message either. Again, whoever it's from, ignore it. By the 100th mile, you may see a pair of beams from other vehicles in the distance moving toward you. If you do, turn off your lights immediately and wait for the other truck to pass by. Once it does, you may turn your lights back on. Repeat for any other oncoming vehicles. Do not honk or do anything to attract their attention. Keep looking in the rearview mirror, and if you see the beams of the truck turning around and coming back towards you, drive away as fast as you can and pray you are faster. Now, when you reach the 120th mile, you'll see a sign for a 20 mph speed limit. Slow down to 20 mph and do not go over that speed, since the sound can attract unwanted attention. You can speed up once you see another sign that tells you the speed limit stops at that point. At around mile 130, you may see a woman waving and asking for your help. Do not slow down and try not to even look at her. Once she's behind you, look in the rearview mirror. If she's still on the road, you're safe. If she's gone, just look straight ahead and don't even think about looking at the passenger's seat, no matter what you see with your peripheral vision. Once you reach 140th mile, you're safe. From here, it's a straight shot to your destination. Don't try to turn your truck around at any point while you're on the road, because you'll end up driving until you're out of gas, and if that happens, you're as good as dead. Don't use your GPS until you reach the town either, because it will take you to an old dirt road which will have you driving in a loop. Once you reach the client's place, the employees will take care of the rest. Let me know if you have any questions. I listened to the message and laughed, thinking Jake simply wants to prank me. That was before my lights started flickering. I tipped my Uber driver $20. I hope it was enough. Not sure where to post this, but here goes. Last night I was working late, so I took advantage of my company's guaranteed ride-home program for overtime work and called an Uber. I was initially surprised when my driver pulled up in an unexpectedly nice vehicle, a Mercedes GL 450. I don't Uber that much, but when I do, I don't think I've ever gotten anything other than a Prius. This was next level. There was bottled water, chargers for every type of phone, and even some snacks. I actually checked my app to make sure I didn't request an Uber Select or something by accident, but it was just an ordinary Uber X. I was thinking maybe I got lucky. The driver was an Asian girl, Chinese maybe. I know there is a stereotype that Westerners can't tell the age of Asians, but I honestly couldn't say if this woman was in her early 20s or early 50s. She had that timeless, fresh Asian look, like that actress from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She was very pretty, but there was something anomalous about her and Uber driving in this car. Normally I don't chit-chat with my Uber drivers, but it was a 45-minute ride home, and after half an hour in silence, the overall oddity of the situation eventually overcame my reluctance. "This is a really great car," I tried. The woman smiled. "Thanks, I like it too." I was racking my brain for a follow-up, but everything that popped into my head sounded like I was some kind of stalker. There was another few minutes of silence before I tried again. "So how do you decide to be an Uber driver?" "Oh, it's kind of a long story," she responded. "We have some time, I think." The woman looked at me in the rear-view mirror. Her eyes were incredibly piercing, as if she was taking measure of my soul. Then she turned back to the road. "Actually, originally my husband was an Uber driver. He was a professional driver in China, which was a high-status job, working for government officials and high-profile foreign visitors. When we immigrated here, he got his commercial license and signed up with Uber. He drove Uber Black and only had commercial clients. Business was good, and he bought this car for that." "Oh, that's cool," I added. I wasn't sure where this was going. But when Uber got popular, there were more drivers. And then they introduced Uber X. Then anyone could drive. You didn't need a commercial license or anything. You didn't have to be a professional driver at all. For a while it was still okay, but over time there were fewer and fewer requests for the high-end Ubers. He thought he could make it up in tips, but at first Uber didn't have tipping. And even when they added it, most people still didn't tip. No one cared about the quality of service or the professionalism. On top of not tipping, people were so disrespectful. They would get the car dirty, come in with their dirty shoes or reeking of cigarette smoke. And worst of all, people would downrate him for no reason, just if they were having a bad day, or maybe they just didn't like Chinese. It was humiliating for him. His income kept going down until eventually he couldn't even pay for our house. We had to move into an apartment, and even then it was a struggle. Eventually, he was so ashamed that he took his own life. I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. I was wishing I had just kept my mouth shut. Luckily, we were almost home. "That's really tragic. I'm so sorry for your loss." Since his passing, I've taken over for him, driving on his account. I go out of my way to provide the best possible experience. And then, if a passenger still gives me a bad rating or no tip, I remember them. I know where they live or where they work, and later I make them pay for what they did to my husband. I was still processing the full import of this when the car came to a stop in front of my house. "Here you go. I hope you had a good trip." I thanked her and carefully exited the vehicle. As I entered my house, she drove away. My Uber app pinged in my pocket, asking me to rate my driver. My entire body went cold with fear. I gave her 5 stars and $20. I hope it was enough. I'm a taxi driver. The other night I had a passenger I will never forget. We are all cursed and we can't even see it. Our eyes won't show us. I was always under the cocky impression that my taxi and I knew the streets of Berlin like no other. You can't begin to imagine the unexpected horrors I've witnessed during my night shifts. You see, people show far less inhibition when it's dark, and sometimes they even reveal a whole different identity. Still, even my 15 years of experience couldn't have prepared me for this one night. Berlin is quite the adjustment if you come from a small Kurdish village, like the one I'm from. I've grown to like my work in this city, but it has its goddamn cursed sides, and that's mostly due to the people. Peculiar people that might appear friendly and normal during the day, but change entirely as soon as the sun goes down. As a driver, I've learned to observe and notice things. Like when I happen to drive a member of some criminal family around. You won't believe how many of those we have in Berlin, but it's not my place to judge. I'm just a driver. I have tons of stories, some sweet and some disgusting, but there is only one night of driving in all these years that has left me sick to my stomach. One that left such a bitter aftertaste that nothing I eat brings me joy anymore. And that's the night I met Julius. When I don't get a call to go pick someone up, I wait in line with the other taxis at the metro station Neukölln. Sometimes I spend hours there, having coffee and a cigarette with other drivers while waiting for passengers. We tell each other superficial stories about our lives and make bets on who will have the best fare of the night. One time I drove a man to a city 200 miles away, made the same money I'd usually get for 3 entire nights. Julius's fare was in a similar price range, even though we never even left Berlin. At the end of the night, I didn't ask him for money. It was a cold and foggy night, typical for the beginning of March. The type of night that you'd rather just spend in bed if you don't have to work like me. I remember thinking that when the passenger door of my taxi suddenly opened from the outside, letting in a cold gust of wind. The cold swiftly disappeared again as this young man with dark hair and just as dark eyes smiled at me. "Are you free for a ride?" he asked. This man could have been 20 or 36, I honestly couldn't say for sure, but I remember vividly how he was radiating something warm and comfortable. He was wearing slacks and a black jacket, underneath a nice white shirt. I don't know much about clothes, but I could tell that someone had perfectly tailored this wardrobe to his body. Maybe that's why I believed him when he said this would be a long ride, but that he had enough money to pay for it. Of course, I said yes and asked if he had any luggage I could help him with. "Just this." He held up a little wrapped package the size of a book and grinned. "But I'll just put it on my lap." He sat down in the passenger seat. Some people do that, usually the ones that are alone and feel like talking. "Where can I take you to? Do you have an address?" I asked. He fastened his seatbelt. "No, not exactly. I'll just give you the directions as we go, if that's all right." And that's what he did. It was fine for me as long as the meter was running. "Dill, that's a nice name," he said after looking at the card I have in the front of the car with my name and number on it. "Thank you," I said while starting the car. "It means heart. I looked behind me to safely leave the line of cars, but froze when I noticed that the cars behind me were gone. And not just the other taxis. Everyone was gone. The entire outside area of the metro station looked deserted. I looked at Julius, but he didn't even seem to notice anything was wrong. He just smiled. For a split second, I swear I saw something moving in the reflection of the window next to him, but when I blinked, it was gone. "Heart, that's beautiful," he said casually. I swallowed and rubbed my eyes. Another look outside proved to me that I'd been imagining things. There were people with bags rushing to their cars, taxi drivers standing around with a cigarette, drunken teenagers loudly chatting. Everything was normal, and it was after 3 a.m. These things happen during night shifts. Your mind gets foggy. I just couldn't let this man notice. I didn't want to lose a fare that would make such good money. Luckily, he was oblivious and continued our conversation. "I go by Julius, but I have no clue what that means." We both laughed. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Julius," I said and meant it. We passed one of my taxi driver buddies as we drove off. He tilted his pale face as he watched us drive off with a distraught look in his eyes. I felt a knot in my stomach as I passed him, but didn't yet understand what my gut was trying to say. When there are passengers in my car, I have the occasional chat with them about the weather or the latest football game, but I'm not a talkative man. Some people pour out their souls, but those are the ones I use the least words with. Once in a while, however, I'll meet a special person who doesn't simply talk to fill the silence in the car, but who is genuinely and truly interested in the lives of others. Julius was just like that. Special. "Do you have night shifts often?" he asked as we were driving down a particularly dark road. "Only on weekends. Money's best Friday and Saturday nights," I said. "You must sleep away the rest of your weekend then." He laughed and I joined in. "Well, sleep is a wonderful thing. There's nothing more comfortable than resting your head on a soft pillow after a long night," I said. "I absolutely agree. If I could sleep forever, I would." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "It's ironic, isn't it? We work so hard to earn a living, but as a result, we wind up losing the time to actually go out and live." With all his confidence, there was also a melancholic side to him. His charisma reminded me of my older brother, but in some ways, I also saw myself in him. I sighed. If it were up to me, I'd have a simple life. A small house in a village with a garden, plant my own veggies, and maybe have a couple of chickens, I added to his thoughts. Julius turned to me with a raised eyebrow. Our eyes met for a second before I had to turn mine back to the street in front of us. His eyes were incredibly dark, as if they only consisted of pupils. I know that sounds creepy, but it wasn't. It felt familiar. Distracted by our conversation, it took me a while to realize that we were driving down roads I'd never seen before. Driving in between multi-story buildings without any lights on. Well, it was the middle of the night, but still. And it felt incredibly strange not to recognize my surroundings. I'm a taxi driver. I always felt like I knew the whole city. "Well, something must have happened down that road of yours to end up in the biggest city in Germany then," Julius interrupted my thoughts. I laughed. "I'm here because of my family. The village life with chickens isn't for them," I said, surprising myself. "I never open up to strangers. No, I never open up to people at all. "Oh," Julius called out as he leaned back a little. "You're a family man, of course. You are a family man. And we do everything for our family, right?" The way he said those words made me feel a little odd for a second, but I shrugged it off. "Always." Julius smiled. We interrupted our conversation as we'd arrived at Julius' first destination, a small kiosk where he needed to drop off his mysterious packaging. "I'll be back in a sec. Wait here." He looked at me with a surprisingly intimidating look. If you don't know what a kiosk looks like, it's basically a tiny corner shop. The windows are filled with beer crates and bottles, so you can't see inside too well. I have no idea what happened when Julius was in there, only that after a few minutes all the lights inside the shop suddenly turned off. That little shop that was the only source of light on this dark street anyway, now almost disappeared in front of my eyes. I had weirdly trusted this stranger because everything seemed so fine and I'd felt so comfortable. But after he left the car, I got this odd feeling inside. A new sense of paranoia mixed with a rush of anxiety. Something inside of me was shouting to get the hell away. I looked for my phone but couldn't find it quickly enough. Impulsively, I set my foot on the gas and got ready to leave. But before I could, the back door of my car opened. Julius jumped back inside with the same friendly smile through those familiar eyes. Except now he wasn't sitting next to me, but behind me. "Where to now, my friend?" I nervously asked, hoping he didn't realize that I was just about to take off. I don't know why I didn't simply tell him to fuck off. For some reason, I couldn't find any courage. "I'm glad you called me that. I'd like for us two to be friends, Dill." He took a deep breath. "Just follow the street for now." I started driving, again following the streets as my passenger instructed me. Finally, I felt like I recognized the area again. We were back in Neukölln. "Dill, my friend, let's get back to our family conversation. Do you get along well with your son?" I stayed silent for a moment. "We used to be closer. Teenagers aren't always easy to deal with," I laughed. "Oh yes, teenagers. Things are much better with your daughter, I assume." We were driving down a quiet neighborhood again, with few lights, and I had to really focus on the street. "Used to. My daughter, well, she is a wonderful kid but also a little bit off lately. Not quite herself. Teenager too, I guess." I stopped speaking. We'd been driving around and talking for so long that it really took me a second to realize what had just happened. I'd never told him that I had a daughter and a son. "Oh yes, she's more distant. Locking herself up in her room, hardly eating any food anymore. That's unfortunate. You still love them though, am I right?" he said. I felt incredibly nervous. I'd made some big mistake by trusting this man with my thoughts all night. Something was definitely wrong, but I had to try my best to stay collected. He could have some really bad connections. "Oh, I have love for my family, but don't we all?" I nervously said. "No, you don't." Surprised at his sudden change of tone, I looked into the rearview window to make some eye contact. Julius, the man I had been driving around with all night, was gone. I looked into the face of a creature I had never seen before. His dark eyes that felt so kind earlier now looked completely wrong, as if someone had slammed a screwdriver into his eye sockets and filled them with a dark void. There were holes in his face filled with some kind of fungi. Repulsed by this entirely wrong face, I forgot to watch the street for a moment and almost crashed into a parked car. I swerved just in time, catching my breath and collecting my courage. My heart was beating so fast I thought it would jump out of my chest. It was late at night. I hadn't slept, I didn't have any water for hours, and I was hallucinating, I told myself, though at the same time I couldn't bring myself to look in that mirror again. "Is something wrong, my friend?" He chuckled. I instinctively turned my head around and saw the same Julius with his regular face sitting there, with a smile on his face. "Yes, sorry," I mumbled. "Long night." Slowly, I tried to collect myself again. "What did you do inside that kiosk?" I finally asked, surprised at my own sudden courage. Even if that face was a hallucination, this man still knew things about my children that he shouldn't. He seemed so interested in my life earlier. In reality, he wasn't trying to get any information out of me, though. He already knew everything. What was this man trying to get from me? I had to get rid of him, but be smart about it. so I decided to drive towards the home of my brother. My brother, well, he is an intimidating man with a lot of power, a shady man who doesn't shy away from violence. If this Julius meant danger, he'd know what to do. Julius's eyes were closed. I thought he might even fall asleep, so I quickly changed direction. I tried to stay confident, but my entire body was shaking at this point. As if he was reading my mind, Julius's eyes opened and I knew without a shadow of a doubt that this night would ruin the rest of my life. "Don't try to be smart, Dill," Julius suddenly spoke with a low voice. I clenched the steering wheel so hard that it looked like the skin on my hands would crack open any second. "I know where you are going, don't. I have no interest in meeting your brother, not tonight," he spoke. "How do you?" I whispered. "I know you saw me, in the mirror. You didn't scream. I like that. You know I feel like I can be myself around you." He grinned. My eyes went to the rearview mirror. None of it was a hallucination. I don't know how to describe it in better words, but I know for a fact that this thing was not human. It was hiding behind human skin. Now I'm going to be honest, because I do truly enjoy your company. This night wasn't about dropping off the package. That's a different business of mine. Tonight was about getting to know you. A million different thoughts were racing through my mind, but all I asked was, why me? He chuckled again. "Oh, please don't be worried, my friend. I can feel this entire car shaking. I'm not here to hurt you. This is about your family. It's corrupted. I could smell it on you from miles away." I swallowed. "If you're not going to hurt me, what else do you want from me?" Julius was smiling at me through the mirror, his mouth revealing a set of rotten teeth. "Being what I am, it's lonely. The fact that your family is corrupted isn't a bad thing. You know, maybe you could introduce me to them sometime." We were on an empty road. There were no people around, nobody that I could ask for help, but I still hit the brakes. I felt sick, but not from whiplash. "You're wondering whether you should jump out of the car, wondering if you could outrun me," he sighed. "But you won't." I took a deep breath. "No, I won't," I whispered. "Because you love your family." I nodded. "And because you noticed that the eyes of your daughter have recently started to look a little bit like mine." He smiled again, and I stayed frozen. "Maybe you should check her reflection, my friend. Are your eyes open?" I'm an Uber driver, and one of my passengers invited me into their home. There are a lot of things I don't understand about this world, a lot of things that don't make sense to me or I simply can't make sense of. I don't exactly have a philosophical outlook on the universe, what our purpose is and all that, but what I saw that night left me asking questions I never thought I'd want to ask. I've seen a lot of things as an Uber driver, questionable things even. That's just a part of the job description. It's an interesting experience, to say the least. But hey, it puts food on the table. I have 2 kids that I need to take care of, and their father is no longer in the picture. I'm rarely ever home because I'm constantly working to make ends meet. I work as a teacher during the day and would drive for Uber as soon as the school day ended. I try to accept as many rides as I can for as long as I can. I wish I never accepted that last ride. It was around 10 p.m. when I got the notification for a booking. The drop-off location struck me as odd, but I didn't think much of it at the time. It was quite a ways from the city, and I didn't think people even lived in that area. The fare was a considerably large amount, so I decided I could make this my last ride and get home a bit earlier than usual. I was just by the pickup location, so I was able to get there in under 5 minutes. A tall, slender woman settled herself in the back seat. She was gorgeous. Short brown hair, impossibly perfect bone structure, and the brightest green eyes I'd ever seen on a human being. She looked to be in her mid-20s. I greeted the woman as she entered the car. "Good evening, Lauren, right?" "Yes. And you, dear?" "Yasmin, yes." She asked me in a tone that sounded far beyond her years. "I'm sorry?" "Your name, dear." My passengers rarely asked me for my name. They usually just got in and stared at their phones for the entire ride. I guess she was just trying to be nice and make conversation. "Yes. Nice to meet you." "Likewise, Yasmin," she responded. It was quiet for a few minutes as we drove to our destination. She spoke up again a few times and asked me about my life, what I did for a living, my family, my hobbies, etc. Then she asked me about my kids. Is your husband watching them right now? No. My cousin babysits them until I get home. She's nocturnal, so she doesn't mind the late nights. How nice of her. I was starting to get a strange feeling about Lauren. It was odd to me that she was asking me about my kids in the way that she was. My passengers didn't normally converse with me, and when they did, they would mostly talk about themselves. Then again, I could have just been overthinking. That, or it was from the burrito I had that morning. Grumble. Definitely the burrito. As I started to feel more uncomfortable with my bowel situation, I checked the map to see if there were any gas stations near the drop-off location. I couldn't find any, which was unsurprising. There was no way I could hold it until I got back to the city. Grumble. As much as Lauren creeped me out, I couldn't just shit my pants. So I mustered up all my courage and asked her, Lauren, this might be an extremely unusual request, but would it be all right if I used your restroom? Of course, dear. That would be no problem at all, she replied. I was looking at her through the rearview mirror and thought I saw her right eye twitch. Must have been my imagination. We'd arrived at a seemingly average suburban house, the kind with a white picket fence and a well-maintained front lawn. Nothing out of the ordinary. Thank you for the ride, Yasmin, shall we? Lauren asked me as she exited the car. I followed suit and accompanied her to the front door. We're actually having a small get-together at the moment, she said to me and spun around to ring the doorbell before I could respond. A young woman had answered the door. Again, very attractive. Man, what do these people eat? She had similar features to Lauren, which led me to believe they were sisters. They had the same brown hair and green eyes. Oh, hello, the young woman greeted us. Rose, this is Yasmin. She's here to use our restroom, Lauren explained. Yasmin, this is Rose, my younger sister. Nice to meet you. Sorry for the intrusion, I apologized. No apologies necessary, dear. Come, let me show you the way, Rose said as she took my hand and led me inside. We're actually having a small get-together at the moment. That was eerie. The way they spoke was nearly identical. Rose even said the exact same thing Lauren did, and the way Rose called me dear when I was probably a decade older than her. When we went through the dining room, I saw their small get-together. There were at least 10 other people in the dining room. They all had the same brown hair and bright green eyes. Even if they were all related, it was strange how even the shade of brown and green remained consistent. I felt a chill run down my spine, the way they were all just sitting there, staring at the food in front of them. Perhaps they had been waiting for Lauren to arrive, but it was still a disturbing sight to see. I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when we exited the dining room, partly because, what the fuck, and how I was seriously about to shit myself. Here we are, please let me know if you require any further assistance. I'll be in the dining room, Rose said as she walked away. Thanks, I called after her. I shut the door and was finally able to relieve myself. I checked my phone to see if I received any messages from my cousin Samantha. Wednesday, 8:13 p.m. Samantha. Hey, Yas. Successfully put the kids to bed. Wednesday, 10:47 p.m. Me. Thanks, Sam. I'm just making a quick pit stop and I'll be headed home soon. Samantha. All good. Take your time, I'm just watching some TV. Me. Alrighty, I'll call you when I'm on the way. Samantha. Okay, stay safe. I pulled my pants back on after cleaning myself and then flushed the toilet. As I washed my hands, I noticed something off about the mirror. It seemed as if it was a part of the wall. That kind of made the alarms in my head go off. I read about this somewhere. I needed to confirm my suspicions, so I placed my finger on the mirror. There was no gap. It was a two-way mirror. I nearly jumped out of my skin when I heard a knock on the door. Yasmin, is everything all right in there? I heard Rose ask me from the other side of the door. Yes, sorry, be out in a sec, I told her. I looked away so that my back was facing the mirror and shot Samantha a text message. I told her to call me if I didn't get to call her first within the next 15 minutes. I put my phone back in my pocket and walked out into the hallway where Rose was waiting. "We were wondering if you would like to join us." She smiled at me. It was unsettling, as if she was up to something. It was like I could almost see it in her eyes, something behind them that I couldn't explain. I felt conflicted, like I wanted to get the hell out of there, but I was also extremely curious. "No, I shouldn't. I have to get home, it's getting late," I replied. "It'll just be for a bit," she said as she took my hand once again and led me toward the dining room. The only empty seats were beside Lauren, so I decided to sit next to her. Rose took the other empty seat beside me. I noticed a huge painting on the wall from across from us. It was a painting of a handsome man with chestnut brown hair and eyes like evergreens in a forest. He looked inviting, warm almost, like a familiar face in a room full of strangers, which was impossible since I'd never met him before. I just felt comfortable. I decided to ask about the man. "Who's the guy in the painting?" "Oh, that's Father," Lauren answered eagerly. "I can see the resemblance," I said awkwardly. "You're too kind, dear. Isn't she just lovely?" Everyone in the room nodded along and agreed with Lauren. Some of them even decided to throw in their own compliments. I was confused because my statement was fairly neutral. "You should eat, dear, lest the food gets cold," the man who sat across from me suggested. I looked at the plate in front of me. It was a relatively normal meal: mashed potatoes, roast chicken, and some steamed vegetables. I looked at everyone else's plates and realized that they had been untouched. "What about you guys? Aren't you gonna eat too?" I asked hesitantly. "Yes, of course, but we believe the guest should do the honor of starting us off," another man stated. I took my fork and picked up a piece of chicken, but my phone rang, saved by the bell. "I'm sorry, let me just take this phone call. You guys can eat ahead," I said as I started to get up. "That won't be necessary, dear. We don't mind if you take the call here." Rose took my hand and gently pulled me to sit back down. "Right, okay," I muttered, then proceeded to answer Sam's phone call. "Samantha, what's wrong? Where are you? It's getting late." Me. "Hey Sam, I'm so sorry. I might be home later than expected. Do you think you could stay a bit longer?" Samantha. "Yaz, are you okay? You told me to call you in 15 minutes. Me. "No, it's all right. Make sure you put the lasagna in the fridge." Samantha. "Yasmin?" I hung up the phone and looked around. Everyone stayed silent as they watched me with their emerald eyes. Lasagna in the fridge was our code for trouble. I silently prayed that she had gotten that. "You're such a good mother, Yasmin," Lauren remarked. Everybody else agreed and started fawning over me. "Thank you," was all I could say in return. I decided to focus on my food instead. I took a bite of the unassuming mashed potatoes and was pleasantly surprised. It was just the way I liked it, creamy and buttery with a few chunks in each bite. "Wow, this is great," I blurted out without meaning to. "Of course, dear. This is Father's recipe. Everything he does is absolutely great," Rose said proudly. "Yes, Father does no wrong," the man across from me agreed. I decided to try the chicken next. I could see why they liked this Father guy so much. He had some really good recipes. I ended up eating everything on my plate. Everyone else finished all their food too. I mean, who could blame them? "Thank you so much for the lovely meal. I enjoyed it. But I really do have to get home to my kids now," I announced. "I hope you still have room for dessert," Lauren said as she entered the dining room, holding a covered round plate. I didn't even notice her leaving the room. I must have really enjoyed that meal. There was a voice in my head that kept trying to remind me that I really needed to get home, to get to my kids, to get away from this place. But once Lauren revealed the cake, all I wanted to do was eat it. And that terrified me. That fear went away as soon as I dug into my slice of cake. It was divine. I must have finished the whole thing in one bite. It was literally the perfect chocolate cake. Each layer was moist, yet still retained its fluffiness, and the chocolate ganache was to die for. "It's getting late, dear. Maybe you should stay the night," Rose suggested. No, I needed to get away from this place and whatever the hell was going on here. I had to take my kids to school in the morning. Sam was waiting for me. She probably wanted to go home too. That sounds like an absolutely great idea, dear, I responded. I had no idea why I said that. Rose's smile turned sinister, as if all the grace and innocence had left her face, like she had a mask on the entire time and had finally revealed what was underneath. Her voice remained sweet when she said, "I'm sure Father would think the same way as well." She led me to the guest bedroom and said goodnight to me, that she would see me in the morning, all the while having that menacing grin on her face. Once she shut the door, something snapped in me, as if I had just woken up. I checked my phone and saw that I had a dozen messages and a few missed calls from Samantha. One of her messages stated that she called the police and that they were on their way. I sighed in relief. Everything was probably going to be fine. The Uber app had the info of where my last drop-off location was, and the cops were going to arrive any minute. I decided to have a look around the bedroom while waiting. Maybe there was something I could use as a weapon, in case they tried anything before the police arrived. On the wall behind the bed, there was another large painting of the man they called Father. I still felt the same way about him when I saw the first painting. I was almost sad this place was probably going to get busted and shut down or something. I looked at the wall across the bed, and there was a mirror that looked to be a part of the wall. Just as I was about to do the two-way mirror test again, I caught a glimpse of my reflection. What I saw made my blood run cold. My eyes, they were turning green.